Hey everybody, with Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom coming out on this Friday, May 12th, decided I wanted to create kind of an impromptu video to just briefly describe what the overall Legend of Zelda series means to me personally. Now, as I've said before on this channel, Final Fantasy is my favorite all-time video game series, but like Metroid and Super Mario, Legend of Zelda is a close second, and there's a lot of personal history that I have tied really behind the series. And since I'm old, I've been playing the Legend of Zelda series back on the NES when it first premiered there back around 1986 or 1987, I believe. And unfortunately, while we don't have the original cartridges, my older brother sold them all, we still have the memories of them. And funny enough, both my brother and I did dress up as Link for Halloween back in grade school. And we actually used guides such as this, and this is actually the original manual for the first Legend of Zelda, and we used that to help us play through the first quest. But it was actually the second quest that I remember the most with that first Legend of Zelda game, because it was tough as nails. We didn't really have any guides on that, although I think one of the early Nintendo Powers actually had map information and other info on the second quest. The second NES Zelda game, Adventure of Link, now that one is, as you can tell here, is one of my personal all-time favorites for the series. Although I do recognize it's not one of the best Zelda games. It doesn't crack my top 3 for the best. So again, I just have my own personal love for it because of not only the difficulty of it being like NES hard, but just how different it was and kind of going to the whole RPG mechanics. I always thought that was kind of cool. Next up was the SNES entry, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And that one was fantastic. That was like the pinnacle of 2D Zelda, but that one was kind of sad because that was the last Zelda game that me and my brothers all played together. The next entry, the Game Boy one, Link's Awakening, was great too. And my best friend, Mobster, he let me borrow his entry all the way back in the 8th grade, and I played the heck out of his game. And that entry, it kind of had an ethereal quality to it, and it suited the overall dream-like, or the dream sort of style that it had. And the next entry was Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the first 3D entry, and I was absolutely awestruck with it. I mean, you want to talk about a rail-to-rail fantastic game. I got it, and I remember getting the game, of course, and I actually had a really bad cold at the time, and as I was recovering from it, it helped kind of keep my mind off of being sick. And I also kind of felt like a personal connection to Ocarina of Time too. There were parallels in the game to previous Zelda games, such as the gameplay loop being similar to Link to the Past. You know, you get the 3 icons, unlocks the Master Sword, then additional dungeons to unlock Ganon's Tower. And then, of course, another link that I noticed was the fact that the 6 sages in Ocarina of Time matched all the town names in Zelda 2 Adventure of Link. And I still continue to play non-portable Zelda entries from there on out. I didn't really get into the portable ones, such as Oracle of Ages and Seasons, the Minish Cap. I did borrow that from Jason the 13th, but I don't recall actually finishing that or beating it. I was more focused on the console ones, such as Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. But again, I wasn't as connected as I was with the first 5 entries. And at that time, I was pretty much like a young adult. So, you know, you kind of don't have that nostalgia growing up with it. And my own worst amount of connection that I had with the console entries was probably with Skyward Sword. And it's ironic, since the motion gameplay is meant to be immersive, but I never felt more pushed away from a Zelda game than that, as I dislike motion controls overall, and I just prefer it like hand controls and everything. Now, I was generally excited for the Switch to come out, as I like the whole concept of the system, and funny enough, the Skyward Sword game was the last mainline new Zelda game, and that was released on the Wii. And of course, there was a system between the Wii and the Switch, the Wii U, and that one didn't get any new Zelda games at all, which is sad because it was Nintendo's first HD system, but that system was overall a flop, even worse than the GameCube. And when I saw trailers for Breath of the Wild, I really wasn't all that excited. I mean, it was cool to see a little bit of a different, not really a look, because it kind of had that cel-shaded look that Skyward Sword had, while still kind of having that realisticness to it. But yeah, I don't know. I just really, maybe it was the feeling of mediocrity still sour in my mouth from Skyward Sword, but the idea of Breath of the Wild being like Skyrim, you know, that open world sort of concept, really did intrigue me, because I loved and I played the heck out of Skyrim. I ended up getting my Zelda machine a day early, because of course that's what the Switch was when it came out, March 3rd, 2017. It was a Zelda machine. Yeah, I think there was like 1 or 2 games that released with it, like I think Super Bomberman R and maybe Snipper Clips or something, or 1-2 Clip It, or I don't know what the heck that game was called offhand. I did end up playing Breath of the Wild endlessly for like 2 months. It was like playing Skyrim and how fantastic that was, but without the jank. And I personally don't mind, or didn't mind, the breakable weapons, because it kind of gave that feeling of like being out in the wild. You know, when you're out in the wild and you're trying to make a go of it, and you find like a branch or something, and you hit somebody with it, that branch isn't going to stay good forever. It's going to break. But so that immersive sense was great, and of course it helped too that, you know, I have a controller in my hand, so I'm not being like thrown into something that I didn't like, such as the motion controls bojazz. But I loved how it became, and not only the immersive sense of that, but it became an experience of talking about my playthrough with like Jason the 13th and others. And we would often compare how far we were versus what like I was doing versus what Jason the 13th was doing versus like what his brothers were doing, and kind of seeing how that overall experience was for each of us. Now, regarding Tears of the Kingdom, the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and again the first new Zelda game since Breath of the Wild, not counting any of the remakes, such as the Link's Awakening one, and I'm not counting anything that's like the Dynasty Warriors games, because those aren't real Zelda games. I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings with that. I'm sure they're great games in their own rights, but they bore me to tears because they're just so hack and slash and just meh. Anyway, the Tears of the Kingdom being announced in the first trailer for E3 2019 in June, then radio silence for 2 years until the next trailer in E3 2021. And honestly, I wasn't really all excited for seeing those trailers, because it looked very samey from Breath of the Wild. You know, what is new that's coming? I'm not really seeing that. And there's been a real slow drip of information, because Nintendo's been really miserly with giving us anything on the game. And just based on the overall story beats, those at least were catching my attention. Like, why is Zelda falling down in that pit, and what's going on with Link's hand, and what's with the Master Sword, and everything like that. And I like doing all the trailer breakdowns and seeing all these little details and everything. But me personally, the newest trailers showing like machine building, I'm not really into that, because I'm not really into like the whole Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts thing. I'm not sure how much that's going to capture my attention, and I'm also concerned about the heavy sky presence, considering my lukewarm feelings towards Skyward Sword. But regardless of all of my misgivings right now, it is a new Zelda game, and it's the first one in over 6 years, and it's the last original release since then, and I'm just totally excited to be able to get into a new Zelda game in so long. I'm looking forward to recapturing that feeling of wonder, of exploring new areas, and now being able to explore the ground, the sky, and maybe even a cave system. I don't know. I'll have to see. Also looking forward to the fantastic combat, because Breath of the Wild was phenomenal. I'm hoping to capture that again with Tears of the Kingdom. I'm also looking forward to seeing wonderfully developed characters and the story playing out. And to that beat, finding out exactly when in the timeline that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are regarding the three main timelines. Is it the child timeline? Is it the adult timeline? Or is it the failure timeline, which is kind of what it's kind of leaning towards? Either way, it's definitely something that I'm really looking forward to. But how much are you anticipating this new Zelda game? And of course, if you're seeing this now after the game has come out, how much has it met your expectations? Now, I'm going to try and put up a first impressions video if I can, detailing what my first thoughts of Tears of the Kingdom are going to be, but we'll see. I might end up getting so immersed in it that I might totally forget that. But either way, thank you for joining me as I kind of went through my own little history and my thoughts on the Zelda series. Real brief thoughts, as you could tell. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications when more videos comes out. Thanks again for watching. Have a good day.